Hello and welcome to process costing using T accounts. This is going to be our last video in this series. We're going to be doing process costing using FIFO. So my disclaimer and copyright notice, the information and opinions in this presentation are those of the author only and not the author's employers or affiliated organizations, including but not limited to Irvine Valley College and the South Orange County Community College District. The presentation is for educational purposes only and does not constitute any legal or accounting advice whatsoever. This presentation is copyright 2008 to 2020 by Ben Tchaikovsky. All rights are reserved. Any distribution is strictly prohibited. Presentations from time to time use information from third parties, third-party information. The third-party information is the property of those respective copyright holders, and the author does not make any claim to the third-party information. Okay, so we're going to use the same problem we did for weighted average, but now we're going to do this using FIFO. So here we've got Dunning Inc. requires multiple departments and areas in order to make a single product. On August 1st, they had 10,000 units in beginning inventory that were 80% complete with respect to materials and 60% complete with respect to conversion. In addition to the beginning inventory, they started and completed 190,000 units during the month of August. In DI's inventory as of August 31st, there were 50,000 units that were 40% complete with respect to materials and 20% complete with respect to conversion. DI's beginning inventory costs were 122,000 for materials and 222,000 for conversion. During the month of August, DI added 318,000 in direct materials costs and 408,000 of conversion costs. So let me just change this up real quickly because I'm doing this on the fly using FIFO. Wow, Tchaikovsky, you're slipping. Method of process costing determine these different amounts. So going back over here, what we're going to do is we're going to go through our FIFO process costing. If you want just to watch this, I have the third video that you can go to. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw 3 T accounts for WIP, direct materials, WIP conversion, and finished goods. And then we're going to place beginning WIP as well as the costs incurred during the month. Then we're going to immediately transfer the beginning balances to finished goods inventory. The remaining balance in the T account should be the costs during the month. So let's go over here and do this. So right over here. So the first thing we're going to go through and do is we're going to draw our 3 T accounts. So we're going to say work in process, direct materials. We're going to have our work in process conversion. And then over here, we're going to have our finished goods inventory. And so right over here for my work in process direct materials, we're going to have our beginning plus the direct materials cost during the month. For conversion, we're going to have our beginning plus our conversion costs during the month. And then right over here, as we look at this one particular question, our costs in terms of work in process direct materials. My beginning inventory was 122,000 and I put in 318,000 during the month. For conversion, my beginning amount right over here, my beginning amount for conversion was 222,000. And then over here, my conversion costs during the month were 408,000. Okay, so the first thing that we do when we are using FIFO is that what we have to immediately do is we have to basically take the beginning balance for both conversion and for direct materials, and we need to immediately send it to finished goods inventory. If you have merchandise, you can fully send it. but we don't have that right here. So I'm going to credit my, basically the amount for my beginning inventory. And then here, and then over here for direct materials, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm fully sending this over here to my finished goods inventory. So when I go through and I add these up, my ending balances after I send it out should be the costs during the month. So this is basically, this represents my cost during the month. You do not have to go through like this in terms of doing this as a step. There's some students that are like laughing at me doing this, but the reason why I do it is because I know I've got to get rid of it. And it's also going to remind me of the second step, which is going through and determining equivalent units. So when we're doing the equivalent units for direct materials and for conversion, the ending inventory and the started and completed are going to be exactly the same as what we went through and did for weighted average. So here I've got my beginning inventory, started, or it's called beginning, started and completed, and then ending. My beginning amount, I had a total of 10,000 units. Started and completed were 190,000, and my ending was 50,000. So in terms of my direct materials equivalent units, and then my conversion equivalent units, the started and completed, this is going to be exactly the same as what we were doing for weighted average. The ending is going to be over here for this 50,000. They were 40% complete with respect to materials. So again, 50,000 times 40%, or 20,000. If you want more of an explanation of this, please go back and take a look at the second video in the series where I walk through this a lot more in depth. Then over here, this is going to be 20% to get to my 10,000, because again, 10,000 and 100% is the same as 50,000 and 20%. 20,000 at 100% is the same as 50,000 at 40%. Now I can compare this 20,000 to my 190 in terms of computing the equivalent units. So now here's where we get to the difference. The difference between these amounts is because I'm taking these beginning inventory costs and immediately sending it out. My focus is on what do I need to do to make these units 100% complete. So here it tells me I had 10,000 units in my beginning inventory that were 80% complete with respect to materials. So to make these 100% complete, I'm going to need to take 10,000 times 20%, or 100% minus 80% already completed. So this is going to be for my direct materials equivalent units under FIFO. This is going to be 2,000 units. Very, very, very important difference between these two. Okay, and again, let's go ahead and do this for conversion. So conversion, the 10,000 units were 60% complete with respect to conversion. So what I'm going to need here to make these 100% complete, it's going to be 40%, or 4,000. So this is going to be 10,000 times 40%, or 100% minus 60% already complete. That's the big, one of the big differences here under FIFO. So my total equivalent units for basically so my total direct materials equivalent units under FIFO is going to be 212,000 for conversion. This is going to be 204,000. Remember, this part here, exact same as weighted average. The difference is up here with regards to the beginning inventory. Okay, so this is really where the big differences are. So let's go back over here to our chart. So we've done step 2. So we've determined the equivalent units. Again, really important that you understand it. The only differences between these two are for beginning inventory. And now we want to determine the cost per equivalent unit. Now, if you remember, when we were doing weighted average, we did the beginning plus the cost during the month. But under FIFO, because we sent out those beginning inventory costs immediately to finished goods, when it comes to going through over here and doing our cost per equivalent unit, all we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking our costs during the period for direct materials, and I'm going to be dividing this here by my total direct materials equivalent units. So this is going to be 318,000 divided here by 212,000. So I don't do anything with the beginning inventory. When I go through and I divide these two together, I get $1.50. So this is my cost per equivalent unit direct materials. For my cost per equivalent unit conversion, I'm going to do the same thing. So my cost during the period for conversion is going to be a total right over here of 408,000, or whatever is left in my T account after I move out of those beginning inventory costs. So I'm going to take this right over here. I'm going to divide this by my total conversion equivalent units. So my total conversion equivalent units is over here at 204,000. So my total cost per equivalent unit is going to be right over here at $2 for conversion, right? So again, key difference here, beginning inventory is not included in the numerator because we already sent it out to finished goods inventory. Finished good inventory, finished goods inventory. Okay, so that is step number 3. Let's take a look at step number 4. So I have 2 options here. And this goes back to the same thing we were doing previously. Do it a little bit different this time. So I have 318,000 sitting in direct materials right now. I know that that is not the ending balance because that doesn't represent all my costs over here. So right over here, what we're going to go through and do is we'll go ahead and we'll say, okay, how much did we go through and transfer out to finished goods during the period? Well, over here, what did I transfer out for direct materials? Well, it's going to be 2,000 beginning equivalent units plus 190,000 started and completed. I'm going to multiply this here by my cost per equivalent unit, or $1.50. So I'm going to get 192,000 times $1.50. And this is going to give me $288,000. So right over here, this is what I'm going to be transferring out to my finished goods. This is what I completed during the period under FIFO in terms of equivalent units. So that's what I'm going to be sending over here to my finished goods inventory. So now when I look at this over here, what is my ending balance? Well, after those transactions up there, I have 318, I have 288 here. So my ending balance here is $30,000. How do I know if I've gone through and if I have done this correctly? Well, if I've done this correctly, this should over here be 20,000 equivalent units, direct materials ending, times right over here, $1.50 is going to be giving me $30,000. So I know I've done that part correctly. Okay, so now let's do work in process conversion. We'll start it here with the other way. So here I've got 10,000 units. I'm going to do this at $4 per unit. So over here, what should my ending balance be? Well, my ending balance should be over here. Should be at 10,000 equivalent units at $2 per equivalent unit. So over here, this is going to be 10,000 equivalent units conversion ending times $2 per equivalent unit, or right over here, or $20,000. So this is what my ending is. So to get from 408 to 20, I need a credit over here of $388,000. So here we'll come up with yet another beautiful color. We'll do some orange. And we got this orange right over here from conversion. So here, this is going to be 388,000. Now, how do we know if we did this correctly? Well, 4,000 equivalent units plus 190,000 equivalent units. So over here, we'll say 4,000 beginning equivalent units plus 190,000 units started and completed times 2. So this here is going to be 194,000 times 2, and that should equal 388,000. There we go. Okay. So we've gone through here, and that is our step 4. Right? So right over here, in terms of our step 4, we've gone through and verified these. Now, lastly, we want to go through and we want to check our work. So before we go through and do that, what we want to do now is we know that the ending amount of direct materials for work in process and then for conversion. So we now want to add up our total finished goods inventory right over here. Our ending finished goods inventory right here is going to be 1,020,000. So how do we check our work? We've got our work in process direct materials, total of $30,000. Our work in process conversion is a total of $20,000. Our finished goods inventory is a total of 1,020,000. So when we add up these three values right over here, I get 1,070,000. So direct materials what I'm going to do now is I'm going to basically add up everything I put into these values over here. And I did something very similar when we were doing weighted average. This is basically a way I can go through and I can check my work. And if we add up these numbers here, I'm going to come up in here and get a total of 1,070,000. So I know I've done this problem correctly. Notice here that this is the same example that we use for weighted average process costing. And look over here. For weighted average process costing, we still got 1,070,000. It's just that what is going where in terms of the values of finished goods inventory, work in process, and work in process conversion is different than what we were doing under FIFO. just because it's just two different methods, but at the end of the day, the numbers in the aggregate are coming out to be the same. This is no different than when you were doing inventory costing, FIFO, LIFO, weighted average, perpetual or periodic. The same amount that's going to be for ending inventory and cost of goods sold is going to be the same when we add them up for everything. So again, it's just another way of going through and doing some inventory costing. So let's go ahead and wrap this up over here for FIFO. Let's just go through and answer these different questions. So my equivalent units for direct materials and conversion, it's 212,000 and 204,000. My cost per equivalent unit was $1.50 for direct materials. Cost per equivalent unit for conversion was $2. My ending balances under FIFO for work in process direct materials were 30,000, 20,000 for conversion. And ending finished goods inventory was $1,020,000. And again, I'd recommend, with these kind of questions, there's a lot of great ways you can go through and check your work. And this is a great way to go through and check it just to make sure that you've been doing it correctly. So that's how I would go through and take a look at some of these problems. So again, want to thank you for watching. If you have any comments, please send them to 1812cpa@gmail.com. Have a great one, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Have a good one.